The rapid diversification of religion in secular countries has resulted in it becoming a more complex subject to discuss, especially in politics, where both the demand to address it and the consequences for doing so are great. Commonly, the result of such discourse is that religions and their members are talked about in generalities, or conversation is heavily limited due to the fear of generalizing a diverse group. This often ends in an act in which one view of religion is presented and then rebuked as a bigoted generalization, purposely not accounting for the diversity within the religion. The problems of discourse increase social tensions outside the realm of politics and commentary. The growth of resent in communities is and will be even more evident for not being allowed to talk about problems some see as religious. Yet when statements are made in generalities, the side being spoken of inevitably will feel a sense of injustice at being treated as a people to be suspicious of, vicariously guilty for the actions of those they apparently share the same religion with. This is especially true in the case of Islam in the West. Some non-Muslims may have watched YouTube videos of certain Islamic clerics, heard news reports or read the testimonies of the perpetrators of terrorist attacks, and concluded therefore that the main causal factor of these behaviours is religious, and specifically Islamic. It is the one thing that links all these events, the shouts in Arabic and the religion of Islam, they may protest. Calling these people names will not dampen this concern, nor even prove it false, especially when they have merely noted a correlation between testimony and action. However, talking of all Muslims as associated with groups like ISIS will also stir resent in many who feel they are expected to apologize for things they have not done nor believed. In this cycle, resent grows by stereotyping people who practice a certain religion as religious fanatics, or by being labelled a religious phobic who should be denied the right of free speech to criticize a religion either by the state or by activists who aid in deplatforming them. It is manifest in the birth and growth of movements, political parties and protests that emphasize the right to criticize Islam and regain freedom of speech. And on the other side, a desire for political and legal action to protect Muslims via Islamophobia resolutions, such as the Canadian Parliament's Motion 103 in 2018 and the proposed Islamophobia definition from a bipartisan UK parliamentary group in 2019. This cycle is accelerated by every terror attack, hate crime or scandal on either side, after which both groups increasingly view the other with suspicion. How then should we proceed with dialogue? For in an increasingly irreligious West, religion and its relation to politics has paradoxically become a major topic of discussion, whether it be on issues related to terrorism or conservative Islamic and Christian values on social matters such as homosexuality and abortion. While intra-religious debate among sects is a constant in the religious sphere, and in many cases is carried out at a level which presupposes the other party is familiar with at least theological fundamentals, understanding is more problematic for those outside, particularly those who have never been religious and lack experience of such worldviews. The populace, including politicians, are not going to become theologically educated in order to increase the level of public discourse and analysis. People have jobs, areas of speciality that require full commitment, families and other passions to which they give their time. However, even if they were to become theologically adept, in which of the many schools of theology would this be in? Inevitably, this only opens up another stage of debate as to which form accurately represents the religion. Is it the progressives, Baptists, Anglicans, Catholics, Calvinists? Al-Ashari, Shia Twelver, Deobandi, Salafi, or yet another among thousands of sects? But more importantly, theological experts disagree widely in the intra-religious sphere. In contrast to the time-consuming demands of such an education, generalizations are a quick and easy temptation. They are sufficient when talking about religion at the most abstract of viewpoints. However, when formulating policies and attempting a more acute commentary on society and religion, a more specific system of categorization is necessary, and one that is achievable. Referring to ISIS and the aforementioned LGBTQ-friendly mosque under the same umbrella term of Islam is useful only to point out intra-religious diversity. After this elementary observation, better categorization is needed to examine sociological questions that consider the different sections within this diverse spectrum. Likewise, taking a centralized figure, such as the Archbishop of Canterbury, as representative of a whole religion is to cast such a broad net that it would include many religious adherents who would not only consider themselves as distinct, they may even view their forced associates as enemies or defamers of their religion. Attempts have already been made to find a middle road between religious expertise and generalizations. New or energetically resurrected labels such as Islamist, fundamentalist, progressive, extremist, liberal, and far right, to name only a few, have evolved or been summoned back to add clarity where it has been deemed lacking. Some of these labels have merit and a degree of accuracy. Others are so broad or ill-defined that they serve mainly to increase confusion. Consider the term Islamism. I have heard it defined multiple ways, but at its core it appears to be used in reference to those who entwine politics with religion and desire to impose their preferred religious law on even those who are not of their belief. Therefore, Islamism presumably extends to every Muslim who votes and does not leave their religious values at the door of the voting booth, to the conservative Muslims who would vote against homosexual marriage based on their religious conviction, just as many conservative Christians would, yet also to ISIS and groups who use military means in an endeavour of conquest and the enforcement of Islamic law. Its span envelops those who wish for traditional Islamic law to be implemented, but who also feel that such should be achieved through peaceful and even democratic means, and Boko Haram, who captured teenage girls from a school in Nigeria. Such terms are little better than all-out generalizations, for they miss important distinctions in attitude and behaviour that are relevant to society. The terms conservatism and progressivism, when applied, pose a similar problem, especially concerning Islam. The questions of whether UN peace treaties are valid or if offensive warfare is legitimate both have conservative answers that vary, yet the difference in outcome is essential to distinguish. A Muslim who believes that traditional Islamic morality, for example the sinfulness of homosexual sex acts, is permanent and for all times, but that elements of Islamic law can be reformed and adjusted, may be considered a progressive, as could one who says both traditional Islamic morality and Islamic law should be reformed, including the idea that homosexual sex acts are sinful at all. These are differences that are important to define when considering society. Conservatism can, however, be used quite effectively when referring to Protestant Christianity, noting the maintenance of Protestant Reformation social values, among which are exclusively heterosexual marriage and male-only church leadership, in contrast to Catholicism, wherein conservatism does not hark back to one period of moral convictions, but is a belief in the hierarchical system's divine mandate on religious matters exercised as papal infallibility. Therefore, in Catholicism, even certain evolutions of doctrine could be considered conservative if they are implemented from the divinely endorsed institutions, the papacy and magisterium. Lastly, the terms radical and extremist are often heard qualifiers usually deployed to describe a certain violent religious individual. These adjectives are almost completely subjective without further definition, and they do not distinguish between a person's attitude, fervency, dedication, and their beliefs. A radical Christian may be the one who fasts often, works as a missionary in dangerous places, gives away most of their possessions, and attends all-night prayer meetings. This is quite radical or extreme. Yet the Westboro Baptists in the USA who picket events with signs expressing God's hatred for homosexuals may in this sense not be as devout or radical, or be equally. It is their ideology through which their energy is funneled that differs. Likewise, an extremist Muslim may be considered the one who partakes in extra fasting on certain days following the pattern of Muhammad, who sleeps in the mosque so to be awakened in time for early morning prayers, and works extra shifts saving every penny to visit Mecca for the annual pilgrimage. Indeed, they may be the janitor who volunteers to unblock toilets and do every less extravagant job places of worship require for maintenance. This usage of the term radical is already commonly accepted, as a New York Times best-selling book by American pastor David Platt, Radical, Taking Back Your Faith from the American Dream, demonstrates. However, radical and extremist are often being used today as positions on an accepted political spectrum with implied values and ideals. The problem here is that the spectrum is not agreed upon, and it remains that one man's centrist is another's radical or extremist. More effective categorization is necessary to avoid generalizations that cultivate resent in various communities, and to make more specific and clear commentary on society. Yet people are not going to become theologians in order to speak with greater accuracy on this subject, and even if so, religious experts disagree significantly and are, as John Locke wrote of churches, all orthodox to themselves.